Hello there, Biakaminso desu and welcome to my review of Callisto Protocol. So, as you may have already seen by the thumbnail of this video, Callisto Protocol was one of those games that I didn't enjoy that much. But let's go by parts. Once again, starting off this video with a huge shout out to Andre Viana, because if it wasn't for him lending me the game, I wouldn't be reviewing it to start with. And you know, it's what I've said if you have watched my recent Sonic review. It's one of those games that after playing it, I finally understood why there wasn't a lot of people talking about the game, and the few that were not saying very good things about this game. So let's go by parts. I was interested in playing it a little bit because it was a horror experience, but people were saying that it was a poorly done, cheap knockoff of Dead Space. And I think they are right. The game has the vibes, it's a horror game in space, and even though I haven't yet played Dead Space, I know that it's very well acclaimed. I'm pretty sure people sing its praises for very valid reasons. Maybe it's something to play next time, when I have the opportunity. But yeah, my first experience with some kind of Dead Space kind of game was Callisto Protocol. I think that may say a lot. The story is very simple. As every horror game, you know, they don't have very complicated stories. You have Jacob Lee, and he is, I think, some kind of smuggler. He's supposed to be working for a transportation company, if I'm not mistaken, but it seems like he's doing more of, illegal transportation. And, so I say that he's kind of a smuggler. And I think he was smuggling something. I don't remember clearly I think he ended up crashing, but I'm not sure if he ended up crashing where he was supposed to make the delivery. I don't recall that detail. But, so his ship was invaded, and he was trying to fight off the invaders. They were like police, I guess, space police, not sure, and he was worried about what he was transporting. And yeah, one of the elements, if I'm not mistaken, of that police force is Dani Nakamura, which is gonna be an important character later on. And they arrive in this like prison planet, and Jacob is basically trying to tell them, hey, I brought the goods, my ship was crashed somewhere over there, and I delivered what I needed to deliver, and I'm done. But instead, he's knocked unconscious by the warden and taken inside. The warden, Leon, is actually portrayed, I think the protagonist, because his face is very familiar, not sure from where though, but I know he's a famous actor. And the warden was the only thing that got me excited the entire game, because the warden is played by Sam Witwer, which is the voice actor and also motion capture for various Star Wars characters like Maul, Darth Maul, Palpatine. He also does the voice acting, and I know that he also portrayed the protagonist of Days Gone. But yeah, he is just an amazing character all around, and of course he did the motion capture and voice for Starkiller for the Force Unleashed games, which I enjoyed, by the way. I wonder if I should do a review of that, because I haven't done it. And so they take him to a room where they basically shave his hair, put a thing on the back of his neck, which is basically the HB bar. No one explained me that, so it took me a while to understand what that thing was supposed to represent. I thought it was just funny, glowy light. That's actually a nice feature that they did, not having the HP bar anywhere, just you looking at the back of the neck of your character and deciphering the lights to see how much health you have left. That was actually a nice detail. And he is basically thrown into the prison with the rest of the prisoners, because that is not actually a prison. That is a research facility that they are doing and transforming people. With what? Well, I thought like this was a virus, but of course, this is a Dead Space kind of horror game, and I was having like Umbrella, Resident Evil vibes from this, but no. They basically encountered an alien that you are actually able to find later on in the game, and that alien produced, spawns, and they were basically injecting these parasite-like aliens, and supposedly people who were infected with them would gain superhuman strength, speed, those kinds of things. So I still got some Resident Evil vibes from it, but I guess it's supposed to be an alien, so I guess this is Las Plagas. I guess. And as you would suppose, the protagonist will remain human for the entirety of the game, but the warden, that is played by such a heavy actor, is actually the final villain. Why do I call it the final villain and not exactly the villain? Because even though it's a short game, but you basically see the warden in the beginning of the game. You are left with a feeling or a cutscene that makes you think that he was killed or at least very badly injured. And then you only see him again by the end cutscenes of the game, so he can actually be set up as the villain and the final boss. It's kind of weird because he's not actually a villain. It's one of those things because you spend most of your time just going through this prison, trying to escape the prison, trying to go back to your normal life. You will encounter, of course, Dani Nakamura. She will go with you part of the way, and I knew every time that I was with her, I was safe. There were no monsters to attack me because I was just in a walking simulator with her, and whenever I got separated from her for one reason and the other, I knew that fight was incoming. I think Sam Witter, the warden's character was not as... They could have done something different with him. Maybe make it... Because, yeah, you can understand that he's kind of a twisted warden, but by the end of the game, he is really twisted because of the infection and because he's just blinded by the extra power that the parasite is giving him. And, I feel like there's not enough setup for that. And that's basically it about the story. You go through the facility trying to escape, encountering regular humans, not really, but you do find these humanoid monsters, and as you advance through the game, they become increasingly more mutated and more difficult to beat. Sometimes there are a few monsters that cannot see you, they can only hear you, so you have to stealth around. There was an area that was a headache because there was such a huge amount of them just gathered in one place, and you can't outrun them. They were like a 10 or more in one place, and if you for some slip you touch one or make some noise with something, forget it. It's game over. You either stealth or you stealth, because there's no way for you to escape those or just fight them all off. I mean, maybe people with more skill than I do, maybe they are able to do that, but it's awful, I guarantee. And there are, of course, monsters that are more tanky. There was a part that I was really pissed. I remember that clearly. There was a part I was very pissed because they introduced a very tanky monster, and then they put me in kind of like a closed arena with two of them, and on top, or just one, maybe just one, but on top of fighting that one, they also put random enemies also appearing from time to time, and I died a bunch of times only in that area, and I was like, because yay, this fight wasn't already tough enough, but sure. I did die a few times. I think sometimes there are areas with too many enemies and the combat is very heavy. The combat feels realistic, but it's so heavy. It's not fast at all. The reloads take a lot of time. So putting areas with a lot of enemies for you to fight and not enough room for you to run, because you will see this said by other people, but you either fight or you fight. The moment that the enemies notice you, running is not an option, because if you try to turn your back on the enemy, they basically one-shot you. So if you're discovered, fighting is the only option, and the combat is very, very heavy. That's one of the things that I didn't like about this game. The other thing is, this is a very straightforward, linear experience. Of course, it's a horror game, story-driven, but honestly, the story isn't interesting enough for you to actually pay a lot of attention. The story is what I've said to you. I don't have any other memorable moments from this game. I mean, you meet the doctor, which is Dr. Mahler, and I actually remember her name because she has the name of a composer. She was very excited about doing experiments, then everything went wrong because the entire facility went bonkers, and the monsters were released and whatnot, and there are very few humans, fellow researchers were killed, and she's trying to survive and fight for her. I think that Dani was also infected at a certain point, and I was collecting some items for Mahler because she promised she could cure Dani. Once again, we're talking about cures like it's an infection, but it's supposed to be like an alien parasite. It's weird, it's weird. It wants to be a Resident Evil, it wants to be a Dead Space. I'm not sure what it is in the end. And then, of course, you have your final boss fight, and you see this board of politicians, researchers, not sure, that are hungry for power, and they say that the human combined with this parasite is the next evolutionary step for humankind to surpass themselves. The typical speech, and they wanted the final test to be the warden that has been mutated after all this time, and they wanted him to be your final boss, and it's a very tough fight, I will say. Damn, it feels like a final boss indeed, but it's also very frustrating to be that hard. But like I was saying, it's a very linear experience. What got me mad, though, is that even though it was a very linear experience, they would sometimes put you in, like, corridors that were built like mazes. And the game is overall so dark, and even though you are changing places, most of the places just look the same as the places as you were in before. It's so confusing, so bland, and I would get lost in the most absurd places. I know my orientation, spatial awareness kind of sucks as well, but I never thought in such a, straightforward game I would be as lost as I was. And also, please someone tell me, why do I have mimic chests? I mean, it's kind of funny happening once or twice, but the mimic chests are more than the normal chests. Either that or I'm very unlucky. So yeah, I didn't understand that. I will say that it feels like a survival horror because they don't give you a lot of items. I mean, they give you enough, enough for you, but I would complain about the quantity of ammo because I would run out of ammo very easily. I know, maybe my aim sucks, maybe I'm just using, not shooting at the weaknesses of my enemies, but I feel like the ammo is not enough. And you get these credits for you to be able to upgrade weapons, buy healing items. There's not a lot of healing stuff that you can buy, separate. Your inventory is very limited, which is not a bad thing. I think it makes sense. But credits are very difficult to get. You get them mostly by selling some components that you pick up, but you have a very limited inventory for them, so I think I was not able to do a lot of upgrades on my weapons, and yeah, I honestly also don't think I saw that much of an improvement. Maybe there was, I just didn't really feel it. So yeah, I think I don't really recommend this game. It's a meh adventure at best, it's an experience, I guess, but I was, most of the time, instead of feeling the tension or the horror or feeling at the edge of my seat, I was just bored and just like, okay, this is another corridor section, okay, this is another arena fighting section, okay, this is another cutscene, okay, wash and repeat. And I was kind of bored, and it's not because of the performance of the actors. I just think that the story is so bland, the environments all just kind of look the same, and I know it makes sense, it's a prison in a planet, but I was just questioning when it would end. It did not grab my attention enough. So yeah, these are my thoughts. The soundtrack, I don't have I don't have specific thoughts about the soundtrack. I didn't really pay attention to the soundtrack, if I'm being honest, because even though the other stuff wasn't really grabbing my attention, I don't think that the soundtrack was memorable enough for me to pay attention to, but it fit. I mean, it's adequate. I have not a lot more to say. Once again, the performances, I think that the game is mostly motion captured. You can recognize a few of the actors. The performances are good. I have no complaints there. I do feel like Sam Witwer as a villain, if they wanted him to be a final boss and a villain, could have been a little more explored. But yeah, those are my thoughts. So if you feel like I have missed anything, if there are other things that you want to point out, maybe things that you enjoyed and I didn't mention, things that you hated and I didn't mention, feel free to share them in the comments. Leave a like in the video if you want to support my content. Give a follow. Don't forget, I always play these first on my Twitch channel if you want to see me playing and reacting live. And thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next video. May music always be your life.